Hey class, welcome back. So hopefully you watched week 8's video first. What this is just an enrichment video where it's an alternate assignment that if you do get done all of your work and you want to try your math skills so far on a real world situation, uh, this is where you do it. So maybe you have heard, maybe you haven't, there's something called red tide, right? And it hits Florida and other places, but in particular Florida, and I'll show you an example. I want you to brainstorm what you think red tide is first, judging by this picture, and then I'll show you a video about in depth what it is, how it affects us. So I'm going to pause the video for a second and just give it some thought, what you think red tide might be. Okay, so let's see if you are right, your guesses. So what red tide is that it's a common name for a worldwide phenomenon that is known as an algae bloom. So if you've ever gone to like a pond that's just stagnant water, you may have seen like the algae growing on top, that green stuff. Okay, this is an algae bloom that spawns typically because of runoff of coastlines where let's say a heavy rain came and a nearby farm a whole bunch of pesticides and fertilizers and stuff that really uh, bacteria and algae love to eat and grow stronger and spread, right? It happens along coastlines mostly, and Florida being having the peninsula is a perfect spot for it to happen because it's warm, which is perfect for algae growth. There's a lot of people that live along the coastlines, which is perfect for algae growth. But not all red tides are toxic, right, or are harmful because there are good algae. Not all algae can be harmful. But the issue is that there is a red tide that is harmful and can be toxic to sea creatures, birds, and humans. So let's watch a video that was a news article, or that was a news broadcast of the red tide, and see how does this affect us and in what ways.
9 beloved bottlenose dolphins have washed up dead in just the last week. The latest victims of the toxic red tide along Florida's west coast.
We have had a few rescues, but primarily we're seeing a lot of mortality.
While the algae bloom happens almost annually, this is the longest outbreak in over a decade, killing turtles, manatees, and other sea life.
We've picked up 16 turtles in the last 24 hours, so it doesn't feel like there's an end in sight.
The red tide hitting beaches from Tampa to Naples. It's a naturally occurring algae in the ocean that can grow out of control and produce dangerous toxins. Also poisoning Florida's water, blue-green algae, choking freshwater canals and waterways inland. It's caused in part by pesticides in urban runoff and aggravated by dams releasing water from Lake Okeechobee.
Just the idea of being around something that could make my son sick is really a big concern of mine.
The water smells terrible and threatens people too, causing respiratory problems, skin rashes, and nausea.
I kind of get like whiffs every now and then. I start coughing and it hurts, sucks.
As the toxic algae threatens wildlife, tourism, and people, scientists say they don't know how long this could last. Nature will have to take its course.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe.
So hopefully you found that interesting, and maybe that gave you a little bit more detail about what red tide is. But think about it, right? Can you imagine if you've ever gone to like Martin's and they have the seafood section, you get that really strong scent of seafood, which can be good. And I mean, we like seafood, most of us, some of us do. But can you imagine all of these fish, these dead fish, rotting, stinking? It's hot, it's muggy. Down in Florida, it's not like our weather. It's relatively warm, cool weather most of the time. Sometimes it's a little bit humid even because you're right along the water. Can you imagine having that smell of death all the time? It makes you sick, right? If you've ever passed by a deer that's been in a roadkill, I mean, if you get that whiff, it's not healthy for us. Same thing down there. There's just so much death of wildlife that, one, it's not healthy for us. It's not good for our water sources. Thankfully, we're not near there, but for the people that live in Florida, it's not good for them, right? But not only from the water standpoint, we eat fish, right? So people who are fishermen and who catch the wildlife to sell for their business, they're losing out. And the people who base their business off of tourism. Unfortunately, of course, COVID is putting a damper on tourism where people aren't going and traveling places. But if there's, of course, COVID and now red tide, where the beaches smell horrible, that it's not safe to swim in the waters, are people really going to travel to these beaches? Well, probably not, which is also going to take an impact, right? So there's environmental reasons, but there's also a business side of things where that's not good for people either. And of course, in business, there's math, right? So here's how we're all going to tie this all together. Let's look at some focus questions that I want you to be thinking about, and I'll show you what the assignment is that deals with red tide. So to look at Schoology, where you found this video is inside this enrichment assignment for red tide. When you click on the red tide analysis right here, okay, the video, of course, is posted, but here's the directions. It says, watch the video about the red tide events that occur along beaches around the world, so not just Florida. Below is the assignment PDF that goes along with the video where you will use math to see the impact that this natural event has on everyday people. You can use Kami, so I'm not sure if you're using Kami in other classes, but I did make it so that Kami does work with it. So to submit your assignment, or if you want to download the PDF and just write it on a separate sheet of paper and send it to me right here where it says submission. So you're going to have to take a picture of it, attach it as a file, and then send it to me here. Or you can send it to me over messages. Whatever works best for you is fine. Like I said, this assignment isn't exactly graded. I am going to be looking at your work just to see if you got it right or wrong, but I'm not going to put an actual grade into into Schoology. So when you click on it, so we'll just say I'll open with Kami. This is what Kami is, if you haven't seen it before. So I'll log in with Google. So when it opens up on Kami, this is what it would look like. So this is the activity, and for my in-person students, this is what we'll be doing in class. But I'll read this to you. It says, one of Florida's most popular fish to be caught and sold is the snapper. 1 pound of snapper sells for $3.27 per pound. This past July, Captain Clyde caught on average 800 pounds of snapper per week. After the red tide issue, it is expected that he will only be able to catch 3/8 less snapper a week than he did in July. So if you wanted to answer this using Kami, you would take this, click here where it says text box, and you just click wherever you want to write your answer, and you just type A, and then give me your answer. So it says A, how much money did Captain Clyde make in a week in July? So you would take $3.27 and multiply that by 800, and that would give you how much he makes in July. Well, B says, after the red tide, how much snapper did Clyde catch? So what you're going to end up doing is you would take the 800 pounds that he would make in July and find what's 3/8 less. So what's 3/8 of 800? So you'd multiply 8 by 3/8 and figure out your answer. Once you get that, it says how much less money will Clyde make now when compared to July? So once you figure out how much snapper he would make, you would just compare the two prices and see how much less does he make, right? Because this is a real world thing. All of these fishermen and the tourist attraction people who work in tourism, if there's less people because of red tide, or if there's less fish because of red tide, they're not making as much money, especially nowadays with the COVID crisis, right? That's going to impact even more. So that's number one. Give it your best shot. Number two, this is kind of like the example we did for this week. It says above are the temperatures in Florida for part of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. The algae bloom's growth increases in size by 1/5 on days that are 85 degrees or higher. On Monday morning in Tampa, a section of algae measured 15 feet wide. So on Monday, in the very beginning of the day, it was 15 feet wide. Not too bad. But if it grows in size 1/5 on days that are 85 degrees or higher, Monday was 85 degrees or higher, so you'd have to figure out what's 1/5 times 15, see what you get, and that means that it increased that much, right? So we'll do this one together. If I had 1/5 of 15, no. 15 times 1 gives you 15. 5 times 1 gives you 5. Well, 15 divided by 5 is 3. So that means that it grew 3 feet by the end of Monday. So instead of 15 feet, now it's 18 feet. Yikes. So if it's 18 feet, right, how much would it be by the end of Tuesday? So you'd have to take 18, figure out what's 1/5 of that, and then keep going. Okay, and then you add them together, and then you'd get your answer for C. Now for A, it just says write the integers from least to greatest. So what are these temperatures from coldest to hottest, from least to greatest? And then give me the opposites. So what's the opposite of a positive 87? What's the opposite of a positive 91, and so on? Okay, so these are just some challenge problems for you to tie together everything we've learned so far. Then what you're going to do, here's some focus brainstorming questions. So right now, hopefully, fingers crossed, what doesn't hit us, there is a hurricane close to the Bahamas that's, as of the time that I'm making this video, which is on Thursday, right, 10/22, there's a hurricane called Hurricane Epsilon that is projected to hit the Bahamas and then potentially hit into Florida. So what I want you to think about, how might a hurricane, and maybe not Epsilon, but a hurricane in general, how might a hurricane affect Florida and the problem of red tide? So think about what causes red tide: pollution, runoff, pesticides, fertilizers, the dams, just people living along the coastline and dumping inside the waterways. There's a lot of different factors that make the algae bloom, and that impacts the red tide. So how would a hurricane affect that too? And then 2, just think about what could be done to lessen the impact of red tide and water pollution overall. So what could we do as people to hopefully fix this issue, or at least make it less of an issue? And then the last one, maybe you use Google, find appropriate sites, figure out what ways has the United States in the recent years, the past 4 years and the years before, there's been a lot of good steps on how to better our oceans and to take strides to clean up the waters, right? So maybe see, how has the United States worked to help our oceans? And then the last thing, it's just a reflection. Write 4 to 5 sentences just answering these questions. So summarize the current event. So what is red tide? Just give me a sentence about what that is. In what ways is math involved? So that's the second question. How is math involved with it? And then the last question is just, what did you learn? So 4 sentences, just 4 sentences. Just give me a reflection. What did you learn with all of this? How does this impact you? And what was it all about? Okay, so that's what this current event analysis is. That's what red tide is. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Take some time. I'm not putting a due date on this. Again, it's just an enrichment activity, something extra for you to do if you want to put your skills to the test. Okay. If you want to send and submit your assignments, remember, just when you're ready, use Kami or download, write on a separate sheet of paper, take a picture, and send it to me that way. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Send me a message here on Schoology, send me an email, whatever works. So until next week, keep up the great work, and I'll see you in the next video.